Okay, we're on Tuesday now, and we're on chapter 3, the story of the pitcher. That story, said Grandpa, begins many years later. My grandfather had built this house. He had a wife and 3 children of his own. My grandfather was a fun-loving man and was always making up new games for his children to enjoy. This is where I want you to stop and look at the family tree that I tried to make because it shows grandfather, and it's grandfather's grandfather, okay, is the man that this story relates to. So listen carefully. And he's describing him as a fun-loving man, okay, always making up new games. Of course, they knew the story of Old Jane and the Indian collection. One of their favorite games was choosing the things from the collection they would most like to have for their own. Grandfather told them that when they were old enough to really take care of them, they could have the things they wanted. My father had his eye on a leather war shield that had a picture of an Indian battle painted on it. Then there was a doll made from deerskin that Aunt Mary had her heart set on. The doll had real hair and a deerskin dress and wore little beaded moccasins. Aunt Mary told me about that doll and how much she wanted it many a time. In the collection, there was also a ferocious-looking mask that was used to scare away evil spirits. Aunt Mary used to shudder when she told me about that, but that was the thing Uncle Frank most wanted. Yes, said Bill, that's for me. Bill got up and began dancing around making weird noises. You don't need a mask to scare things, said Lisa. She covered her ears. Oh, sit down, said Jed. Let Grandpa tell the story. Of course, there were other things the children wanted, but those were their extra special choices. They all wanted the feather bonnet, but Grandfather said that was his special choice. The Civil War was going on, and you'll remember Mrs. Dunlap talked to you about the Civil War. We read about it. And Grandfather knew that he would soon have to join the fighting. His children were very unhappy about this. They didn't want their father to go away. Grandfather couldn't stand seeing his children unhappy. He decided to leave them something to keep them busy and amused while he was away. He left them a puzzle to solve. Early on the morning he was to go, he called his family together. He told the children that he was going to see how clever they were. He had hidden clues for them to follow that would lead them to a treasure. Grandfather held up a small envelope. He said that the whereabouts of the first clue was inside. He started to give the envelope to the children, but Grandmother stopped him. She said that if he gave it to the children, then they would not do their chores, and she needed their help with him going away. Grandfather and the children knew better than to argue with Grandmother. She was a real stickler for work, and no matter what the situation was, work must come before play. Nothing could change Grandmother's mind about that, so Grandfather handed Grandmother the envelope. She dropped it into her apron pocket. Grandfather winked at the children and told them that they would just have to do their chores extra fast. The children were terribly excited. They asked if the treasure was hidden in the house. Grandfather told them it was hidden in a part of the house. They asked if they could look for the treasure without the clues. He told them yes, but he didn't think they could find it. And he was sure they wouldn't find the first clue without the envelope. But the children still weren't satisfied. They begged him to give them just a hint. He laughed and said that he didn't think their mother would object to just a hint. It might make them work faster. He left the room, and when he came back, he had a flat package under his arm. He told the children that they could open it as soon as he had ridden as far as the bend in the road. What was in the package would give them their hint. And then he went out on the porch and Grandfather kissed each of them goodbye, and he got on his horse and rode away. But before Grandfather had rounded the bend, a man came riding in from the other direction. The man told Grandmother that her sister was ill and wanted her please to come. This upset everybody, and while the man hitched up the horse to the buggy, Grandmother packed a few clothes. Then she bundled the children into the buggy and off they went. Grandmother's sister didn't live too many miles away, but it was a long trip in those days. There were no paved roads, and the horse couldn't go very fast pulling a buggy. It was more than a week before Grandmother's sister was well enough for Grandmother to bring the children back home. It was night when they got back, and the children were tired out. Grandmother put them right to bed. Early the next morning the children got up. Their first thought was the treasure. Quickly they opened the package their father had left, and they saw the 4 sketches he had made. And when they recognized the sketch of the feathered bonnet, they ran to the case where the bonnet was kept. They looked it over carefully, but it looked the same as it always had. The children were puzzled. Then Aunt Mary recognized the little pot as being one from the Indian collection. They rushed back to the collection, and they found that the little pot was gone. Not only was the pot gone, but so were all of their special choices. The children were so excited they couldn't stand it another minute. They decided to try to get their mother to give them the envelope right away. The children ran to the kitchen and began clamoring for the envelope. Grandmother had been so upset about everything that she had thought no more about the envelope. And when she heard the children, she threw up her hands and ran out the back door. The children could not imagine what was wrong. Never had they seen their mother act that way. They ran after her, and then they knew. Grandmother was doing the laundry, and there was a big tub of clothes boiling. And in the tub was the apron with the envelope. Grandmother took a stick and fished the apron out of the tub, but it was too late. The note was nothing but a pulpy mess. Of course, there was nothing that could be done about it. The children began looking for their father to come home. Some of the other men had already returned, but Grandfather never came back. He was killed in some last-minute fighting. The children had looked everywhere they could think of. They studied the picture over and over again. And since the first sketch was of the feathered bonnet, they thought maybe the clue was there. They took the bonnet down again and again, but they couldn't find a sign of the clue. They practically took the house apart looking for the treasure, but it was no use. The things were never found. A late good night. Gee, said Lisa, it makes me feel all sad to think about those children looking so hard for the treasure and never finding it. I know, said Grandpa. When I was a little boy and my father would tell me that story, I would feel the same way. More than anything in the world, I wanted to find that treasure and surprise him. Suddenly, Jed smiled. He looked at Lisa and Bill, and then all 3 children started to laugh. Grandpa looked puzzled. He said, "And what's wrong with wanting to surprise your father?" "Nothing, Grandpa," said Jed, "but that's exactly what Dad said. More than anything in the world, when he was a little boy, he wanted to find that treasure and surprise you." "Oh, he did he? I never knew that," said Grandpa. He chuckled. "That's a good one on me." "Your grandpa and I thought for sure it would turn up when we put in electricity and water," said Gran. "We followed the workmen every step, but we didn't find a thing." Gee, Grandpa, said Jed, do you think the things would be any good now if they were found? That depends on where my grandfather hid them. If they are in a dry place, they'll be all right. Just recently I read about them finding a little horse made of twigs that was 3,000 years old. I wish we could find the treasure. How I would love to have that doll, said Lisa. Oh, if we just had one little clue. Grandpa chuckled and pointed to the picture. He said, there's your clue. All you have to do is figure out what it means. So if you go back to page 22, look at that picture. That is the same picture that hangs above their mantle, above the fireplace. And that holds all the clues to the treasure. Just then, the lights came back on. That's a surprise, said Grandpa. I didn't think we would have lights again tonight. I'm glad they're on, said Gran. We can have some hot chocolate. Everybody will sleep better. I'm for your hot chocolate anytime, said Bill. You're for food anytime, said Jed. Grandpa put on his raincoat and got a flashlight. While you fix it, I'll just check on the animals, he said. And by the time the hot chocolate was ready, Grandpa was back. Everything's fine out back, he said. Could you see what the lightning hit? Asked Bill. No, said Grandpa. It is raining too hard to scout around. That will have to wait until morning. After the hot chocolate, everybody said their goodnights and went to bed. It was way past bedtime. The children fell asleep almost as soon as they lay down. Spoiled plans. When Lisa woke up the next morning, it was gray and overcast. Oh no, she said. It looks as if it might rain any minute. She quickly dressed and ran downstairs. Jed and Bill were already eating breakfast. Hi, lazy bones, said Bill. Hi, where's Grandpa? Said Lisa. He had his breakfast earlier, said Gran. He went out to take a look around. Hurry up, Lisa, said Jed. We want to get started on the treehouse. I think it's going to rain, said Lisa. But we can work until it does, said Bill. Why don't we go ahead and find the board and tools, said Jed. Just as he said that, Grandpa came in. I'm afraid you children will have to wait a day or so to start your treehouse. He said, Why? They all asked. Lightning, said Grandpa. It hit one of the big limbs on the top of the old oak, and the limb is wedged up in the tree. The children did not wait to hear more. They left the table and raced out of the house. Gran and Grandpa followed them. Oh, I hope it's not one of our limbs, said Lisa. But it looks as if it is, said Bill. Jed went closer. He called, Nope, we're okay. That limb is just hanging down over ours. Lisa and Bill went closer too. Thank goodness, said Lisa. All three of the limbs we wanted are still there. Grandpa, can't we just break off the lower part of it and go on with our treehouse? Asked Bill. Indeed not, said Grandpa. That's a big limb. Any movement might bring it down on you. I'll not have you take that kind of a chance. How long do you think we'll have to wait? Asked Jed. I want you to think about what the kids are really eager for right now, because it might change. What are they eager for? What are they wanting to do and now they can't? Because why? I'll call Mr. Sanders today, said Grandpa. He has the proper equipment to do things like that. It will depend on when he has time to do it. I'll get him to put up your rope swing at the same time. Well, there go our plans for today, said Lisa. But we can still look for the boards and the things we need, can't we, Grandpa? Asked Bill. Sure, said Grandpa. I don't think you would get much more than that done today anyway. That rain is coming soon. The children went out back where Grandpa kept scrap lumber. They began plundering in the pile, pulling out boards they thought they could use. Lisa picked up a piece and some black bugs ran out. "Ugh, bugs," she said. "Sure, there's always bugs around old wood," said Bill. He picked one up. "Here, get acquainted with it," he said, and put the bug on Lisa's arm. "You stop that, Bill," screamed Lisa. "You're just being mean." And then the rain started. The children ran to the house, but they were damp by the time they got there anyway. "Rain caught up with you, I see," said Grandpa. "Run on up and change," said Grandma. "It's too chilly to stay in wet clothes today." The children went up to their rooms and changed into dry clothes. And that is the reading for Tuesday.